Welcome to our live session today. I will be going over a quick startup presentation to welcome you all and introduce you to our program and various opportunities if you have not previously attended our shadowing sessions before. So Pre-Health Shadowing is a student-led, minority-led, women-led nonprofit dedicated to help prospective healthcare professionals gain access to educational resources into matters and regardless of their demographic status, abilities, or location. Now, my name is Susan, and I am the Chief Liaison at Pre-Health Shadowing, and thank you all so much for attending today, and let's get started. So just a little PSA, we do have closed captions for all of our sessions to accommodate all students. The setting is available on the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you need assistance enabling the transcript, please direct message one of our team members, and we are always looking for ways to be more inclusive and ensure our sessions are accessible to everyone. So please, if you have any recommendations for how we can improve our sessions, please email us at info@prehealthshadowing.com on the screen. So since this is an international program, we want to know where are you guys Zooming from today? Drop it in the chat. So I'm actually calling from New Jersey. Okay, wow. All right, so we have a pretty diverse group here, as you can see it in the chat. Okay, so if you want to stay in the loop, follow us on social media. We are active on Instagram, TikTok, or sign up on our email list on our website to never miss a session. Okay, so we have partnered up with Kaplan to get our students a 10% discount code that can be used on all Kaplan products, as well as free resources such as study guides to help prepare you for standardized tests like the MCAT, NCLEX, or PCAT. If you fill out our short survey in the chat, we will get you signed up for these deals for free. Okay. All right, we would also like to draw your attention to another amazing program, which is Neolith. Neolith is an online mental health program for students for pre-health shadowing sessions. Especially, we know that the path isn't easy. That's why we have partnered with Neolith to spread the word and offer free access to our services. So if you use the link in the chat or enter the code pre-health when signing up, it will be completely free and you will have the resource. And also, I'd like to introduce you to another program that we partner with, which is Mask for Masks. It is an amazing women-led organization that donates 4 masks for every 4 masks sold. These go to people in need during the COVID pandemic, those in the homeless community, healthcare workers without proper PPE, and others who are struggling to stay safe. With our discount code PHS15, you can get 15% off your order. And if you buy this method through pre-health shadowing, we will also get 10% off for the proceeds, which is amazing because we are a nonprofit that runs solely off of the support of our community. If you want to play a bigger part in supporting PHS, we will also love for you to join our network of student volunteers and team members. You can apply to be a part of our administrative team and lead students in various projects, initiatives with professional outreach, grant writing, and etc. We understand that as a pre-health student, you may not have the time, so we also offered opportunity to volunteer asynchronously with tasks that can be done on your own time. We would love to have you to be a part of this program and contribute your unique perspectives. All right. If you're a high school student and want to be involved, we have a startup program called HCP, which stands for High School Training for PHS. This allows you to connect with college pre-health programs, get involved in fundraisings for PHS, and organize resources for other high school students interested in medicine through pre-health shadowing. We want to recognize the hard work of all of our students in the program. So if you're interested in getting published, you can submit essays, reflections, research papers, or reviews to our editors in chief through the link dropped in the chat. We have your work on our website, and this will look great on your CVs, applications, resumes, etc. So please take advantage of this. Part of our mission at PHS is to promote diversity. In order to do this, we have launched an initiative to have monthly panels to celebrate different demographics in the field of medicine. Some of these upcoming events include a series on patient experiences, a COVID-19 roundtable, and an international student forum. If you have a mentor, professional, or a professional that have inspired you and you think can contribute to these conversations, please nominate them today using the link in the chat below. And also, we can also humbly ask that you donate to our program. As you know, pre-health shadowing is completely student-run, and we are working around the clock to keep this free and accessible to everyone. Unfortunately, Zoom and our other websites are not free, so any contribution you can give would be greatly appreciated. If you are not financially able to, however, we do request that you send this link to someone who you think can contribute and support these that we cannot afford similar opportunities. So throughout the session today, we will encourage you to drop any questions you have for our speakers in the chat. Our team members will make note of these to be asked in the later half of the session. So just a reminder, take good notes as our professional is going over their presentation, as there will be a chance to take a post-shadowing assessment to verify your virtual shadowing hours. More information will be available at the end of the session, so please stay tuned. And also, lastly, we do request you turn your cameras on if you can. This is possibly no means an obligation, as we are respectful of our different circumstances, but it does help us to feel closer together in a time where socially distancing is mandatory. We also request that you please make sure to mute yourself, as this will ensure that the professional has the complete and full attention from the audience. Okay, so I appreciate you for listening. Now I'd like to welcome our professional speaker today. Thank you so much for joining us today, and you may start sharing your screen whenever you're ready.
Okay. Okay, hi everyone. Uh-oh. Says I can't share a screen and said while someone else is sharing. Okay, all right, that seems promising. Okay, hi everyone. How is everyone doing? That's kind of a rhetorical question since we're on Zoom. But I do want to say I'm thrilled to be here. I appreciate the invitation. I will go out there right at the outset and say that I'm understanding that many of you are undergraduates. I happen to believe that that's one of my favorite stages to mentor and guide trainees. Folks are really excited, they're really enthusiastic, and they're just at the incipient stages of the rest of their career. And it's a really exciting time in anybody's life, and definitely an exciting period to help contribute to as a mentor and a scientist. So I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled to be here. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Liz Engler-Chiurazzi. I am an assistant professor at Tulane University in the Department of Neurosurgery. I am part of the Clinical Neuroscience Research Center, and that has been founded in the last couple of years with the goal of helping the clinical neurosurgery and neurology departments get more involved in basic and translational research in ways that advance healthcare for everyone. My training, I'll get into that in a little bit, but part of my training is in outreach and science communication and STEM community engagement. And so part of my affiliation also is as a AAAS if-then ambassador, and I'll talk more about that in a little while. But before I get started, the first thing I want to query everybody is to get to know you all, because I think I can present these slides, that's fine, but I want you all to get as much as you possibly can out of this for the time that you're putting in. So my first main questions are sort of demographic. If everyone could just respond saying what their name is, if they're comfortable sharing that, their year in training, where you're going to school, and potentially where you are located in the world. That would be awesome, just so I can get a sense of where people are headed, and maybe cater some of my discussions and advice that direction. Okay, so I'm just gonna peruse the chat. Okay. Okay, awesome. We've got some seniors, some high school students. I've got someone from Flagstaff. That's awesome. We'll talk a little bit about my time in Arizona in a little while. Let's see. First year students, recent grad, rising junior. Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Keep those coming in. I'll check back in a little bit. Okay. Fantastic. That does give me a sense about the types of things that we'll talk about. So let me close this just for a second. And then to the moderators, as soon as I share my screen, I may lose the ability to see the chat. It's just how my computer works. As soon as I make this bigger. So if questions or comments are coming in, I want to encourage everybody to interrupt me. This is meant to be a dialogue, not a diatribe. So I want this to be a back and forth. If you have questions, you want to raise an issue as I'm going through, it is absolutely no problem. So, put that in the chat and we will address it at that moment because I think that's the best time for it. Okay, so as far as the content of the presentation, I've laid out a couple different angles. First, the obvious one. I'm going to talk to you about my career. I am not a clinical trained doctor. I have a PhD, so I'm on the research side and mostly on the basic research side. And what that means is that I focus primarily on mice, rats, animal models, cells, or tissues rather than working directly with humans. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you can do with that career. Then I'm going to talk to you about specifically some of the research that I'm particularly interested in, the growing field of neuroimmunology. And then lastly, we'll end with sort of the trajectory of careers and how you can engage in this career trajectory in a way that's sustainable in the long term, because you all are definitely, I'm sure, ambitious and accomplished, but it is a long, long haul. And it's important to remember that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and to make sure that you have systems in place to help you keep going. So the title of the talk today is going to be Sick as a Mouse, talking about neuroimmune interactions and their impacts on brain function, mental health, neurological injury, and disease. Before we get too in deep, I am on social media, various places. Feel free to reach out to me in all the various ways. I've listed the handles here. I also have a lab website you're welcome to check out in the future. And feel free, if you like, tweet at me, tag me on whatever platform, and you're welcome to take screenshots. I would ask that some of this data I'm going to present to you is unpublished. So if you do take a screenshot and put it out on social media, if you could do a non-data slide, that would be excellent. But otherwise, I encourage you to connect with me in as many platforms or ways as you feel comfortable. And I look forward to continued sustained conversations. I also strongly believe in starting out any good presentation by thanking the hardworking efforts of all the people that contributed to what I'm about to show you. So that includes the undergraduate students who are members of my laboratory currently at Tulane University. I recently relocated. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And so there's a number of undergraduates who really substantially contributed to the success of this project, as well as technical staff and graduate trainees. I would be remiss if I did not stress the absolute critical importance of mentors in your academic and professional success. I know that was discussed at the top of the presentation. So here's my mentoring team. It's extensive, and I have a lot of very smart people helping to guide my progress and make sure that I am doing things to the best of my ability. And so I want to acknowledge their contributions as well. I always acknowledge my village. I think this is an important thing. So I have a very understanding and accommodating spouse who's taken care of things so that I can be here today. My daughter, Isabella, you'll see some pictures of her later. She is absolutely, phenomenal, wants to grow up to be an artist, and it's awesome, but she's super interested in science as well. So we're thrilled about that. And then a new trend in, academia is the use of shared research instrumentation resources. This is a career trajectory that is definitely worth talking about because it's emerging as NIH, National Institutes of Health, and institutions around the country seek ways to get more bang for their buck when it comes to research activities. We're finding that the cost of research is going up. The problems we're trying to solve require increasingly sophisticated techniques and increasingly diverse skill sets, which means you got to get a lot of people involved. Shared research instrumentation really facilitates this in a lot of ways, and I'm happy to talk about that more at the end. And lastly, the funding, the way that all this work gets done. I worked very hard to acquire the funds that move this project forward, and I definitely want to acknowledge that. Just a little bit about me. My name's Liz. You can, find me, like I said, on social media. Feel free. This is a mentoring relationship. I want you all to feel comfortable engaging with me. So Liz is fine. If you feel more comfortable, Dr. Liz is fine. But no worries. We don't need to go too formal here. I was born in Los Angeles, California. I grew up about an hour outside of downtown in a nice little community called Thousand Oaks. Did okay in high school, and then decided to go to Arizona State University for undergraduate. At the time, it was voted the #1 party school in the country, and I'm very proud about that. I contributed a little bit, but it turned out to be a really great decision because that school was undergoing a major paradigm shift in how they handled undergraduate education. And so one of the reasons that I chose Arizona State was that they gave me a scholarship. They gave me a half scholarship. So it made affording college really feasible. Whereas other schools that I applied to within California, admitted me, but there was, sort of, okay, you can come and you can pay full price. And so, what amounted to be a financial decision worked out really well because Arizona State at that time was really starting to invest in their undergraduate education program. They had an honors college that I think in recent years has emerged as one of the premier honors colleges in the country. And so that really helps when I say that I'm a graduate of that program. As well, you may read in the headlines, their investment in virtual education has elevated their status in the U.S. educational system as well. And with this current pandemic climate, it's really supported their activities. So that choice, I think, while it was a good one at the time, it's really turned into being a great one. And that says, that's to say nothing about the high quality of education that I received while there. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But now I'm married with one child. I'm an assistant professor. What that means is that my main work is doing 3 things: research. First and foremost, my main responsibility is to doing experiments and running the projects in my lab. The second thing, I do some teaching, although to a much less extent. So that comes in many forms. It obviously comes in the form of doing classroom lectures and running an entire course. It can also be guest lectures here and there. And finally, mentoring. So mentoring of the next generation of trainee falls within that. And so you need to achieve excellence in mentoring as well. And then lastly, service, either to the institution or to the community. So those are the 3 things that really make up most of my time. And then I mentioned it here, you got to have hobbies. We're going to talk about that in, I think, a little bit later. And then I'm going to mention it here. I just want to make sure I've got all the, okay. I'm going to mention it here. I definitely find a hobby important in maintaining your longevity in this career. You cannot be all work and no play. It will burn you out before you hit 30. So it's important to have work-life integration. It's important to have boundaries, and it's important to have things that are enriching to you beyond the work. Now, none of us get into this business because we want to become millionaires, and none of us get into this business because we're not passionate about what we do. So, I can tell you, I get a great level of reward from my work, but at some point you gotta stop and you gotta do stuff that is rewarding in other ways. So I do that through STEM education to the community. I also engage in a non-traditional athletic activity known as roller derby. And I have a blog where I integrate roller derby experiences with my career as a scientist. And then I also jog occasionally, and I enjoy fine dining. Oops. Okay. So, this is the academic career path, in a nutshell. And I know many of you may be med school bound. Some of you may be considering graduate school. And actually, that's a really great polling question that I didn't think of. Can you all pop into the chat? What are your future career plans? Are you considering going right into working? Are you thinking about medical school? Or are you thinking about graduate school, or some combination of those things? Okay, while those pop in, I'll just keep chatting. So this is the academic career path if you're considering earning a PhD. So you go to college, you seek out undergraduate training, and that takes a variable amount of time. And then after some period, some folks go right into graduate school. Others take some time to explore other options, gain other experiences, but then you seek out graduate training. And this is an intensive period of a number of years where you learn how to be a professional scientist. Depending on the field that you go into, but I think almost ubiquitously in the context of STEM fields, a postdoctoral fellowship, especially the biological sciences, is a requirement. Within some fields, 2 is more common than even 1. And this is about 2 to 4 years of extra training where you diversify your experiences, learn more techniques, and become a more well-rounded scientist. So in my case, I went to Arizona State University for undergraduate. I decided to stay on for various reasons. I'm happy to speak to what those are in more detail if there are questions. At that same institution and pursue my PhD, I earned it in psychology with an emphasis in behavioral neuroscience. So my interest always lay in understanding how the brain as an organ at its foundations was controlling behavior and how we could modulate that to improve human health. And then I did a specialization in women's health. So I was particularly interested in exploring how changes in sex hormones like estrogens or treatment with estrogen containing therapeutics affected the trajectory of brain aging. And the reason I was very interested in that is that one, half the population are female and all the population ages. And so we all have a vested interest in understanding how our brains change as we get older. Half the population goes through menopause, and that is associated with profound changes in how the brain functions and sets you up for much higher risk for age-related cognitive decline, neurodegeneration, and the like. And so I really wanted to understand that. And also I was very excited to continue studying and being mentored by a very passionate, very gifted, a very smart woman who was just at the beginning of her career. And that really motivated my choice to stay on and pursue that work. I guess before I go on to why I chose my postdoc fellow, what are some of the answers that people were saying about their goals? Oops.
Yeah, so actually we have a lot of students that are planning to go right into med school after graduation. We did have a few physical assistant schools and some said grad school. So that's like the majority of the plans.
Okay, perfect. All right, so for anybody involved in research in one form or another, if you're trying to get a PhD, a doctor of philosophy, you'll probably, in the biomedical sciences, you'll probably be looking at a postdoc fellowship. I chose mine to understand more gender medicine and general aging and age-related injury trajectories. So I sought out, after I finished my PhD in 2013 with Dr. Heather Bemonte Nelson, I sought out a postdoc fellowship with Dr. James Simpkins, who was one of the first to demonstrate estrogen neuroprotection in the brain. Until his work, we thought estrogens were important for sex and for maternal behaviors. And, that was about it. So the fact that he demonstrated that in the early 90s was pretty remarkable. So I chose to do a postdoctoral fellowship with him in West Virginia University, and worked on expanding my skill sets and learning from him. He's a phenomenal mentor and really invested in his trainees' success and towards the end of his career. So it's you have different reasons for choosing people, but everybody offers their advantages and disadvantages. But I think I got pretty lucky. Then the other thing that I did with my time there was I also ran a shared research facility dedicated to the conduct of rodent behavioral assessments. So that was where my training in psychology and cognitive aging really helped me out, as I was able to take on that role and pursue that career direction and really explore that. Now, ultimately, I didn't choose that path, but the scientists who are chiefly responsible for running these shared facilities are becoming increasingly common. And it's a very viable direction if you decide that your goal and your legacy that you want to live is helping other people do excellent science, but you don't want to have to try and get all the grants and lead the labs and do the mentoring one-on-one for folks. So that's something I'm happy to answer questions on. And then lastly, you get your first faculty position. I started at West Virginia, and now I find myself at Tulane. And I'll say that along the way, life happens. So, I got married and had a baby all within my graduate training. You move. You need to help out family with elder care. Life is going to happen. Again, I'll say it, here, and I'll say it over and over again. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And you need to build your trajectory around understanding that things are going to come and go in your life. They're going to get in your way. And you need to think about that as part of your life plan and make sure that you have systems in place to support you as life does tend to occur, whether we want it to or not. Okay. Another polling question that I guess it's a good time to ask is, of the folks who are planning on pursuing advanced education, either medical school, PA, graduate school, what have you, how many folks have considered doing research as part of their trajectories? And if so, have you gotten involved in research already? And I would say, what areas are you hoping to get into? Okay, let's see. I might be able to see things here.
Okay, so we have a few. Some of them are already doing research, so that's fantastic. And others are looking into doing it either in physiology or kinesiology. There's also a few neurological sciences, or researching mental issues on women specifically, or just gender studies in general. So yeah, we're all looking forward into doing research.
Okay, fantastic. Good. Okay, well, the cool thing about research is, you have the opportunity to explore just about anything. The challenging thing about research is that you're somewhat, especially, as an undergraduate, you're somewhat limited to what is available to you at your institution. But I'm happy to talk tips and tricks for trying to track down folks who might be doing things that are relevant to you, and sort of provide some guidance. And I'll say too, it's awesome. I saw some folks interested in biochemistry and immunology and neuroscience. I definitely have a fondness on the neuro. I think it's pretty cool. But it may evolve, and be prepared to see the focus of your research and the topic that you're working in, change potentially drastically as the field evolves. So when I first got into science, I was looking at, sex hormones and menopause and rats and cognitive aging. I'm now looking at stress and the immune system and mental health and stroke. And you can see that there's definitely there's a path I can trace, but I've had to relearn entire fields from scratch several times in my career. So be prepared, and don't necessarily lock yourself in to one area without some flexibility. So let me tell you a little bit about that. Now, normally I would have a spiel about what it means to get sick and how all that feels. That seems like in the past year, not as necessary, since we've all kind of become accidental immunologists as a result of this pandemic. So in case anyone still needs a refresher, I'm just going to go over really briefly the immune system, just so that at a high level you can understand what I'm trying to explore here when it comes to the brain. So there are two main arms of the immune system. There's the innate arm and the adaptive arm. The innate arm is what takes place in the minutes to hours after you've become infected or injured by something that would do you harm. So we've got our skin, our epithelial barriers, our mucous membranes. That's our first line of defense. If that gets punctured by some kind of microbe or pathogen or damage, then the immediate non-specific response of the innate immune system takes place. This is composed of things like phagocytes or macrophages, dendritic cells, a number of cell types that I won't go into in detail. There's some great YouTube videos. If you need this resource, I'm happy to provide links to those. And it's super, super complicated, but suffice it to say, one of the main jobs of this complicated and involved response in the first few hours after an infection is to try and quash that infection as quickly as possible, all while signaling to the rest of the immune system that there's a problem, that we need help, and that we need to mobilize a lot of resources biologically to try and keep ourselves alive and get rid of this threat that this pathogen is posing. Then the adaptive immune system is what gets kicked into gear. I'm going to grossly oversimplify this as well, but there's two main arms to the adaptive immune system, and it gets initially engaged again in the late hours to days after an initial infection. And that's because it takes time to signal to these cells. Now there's the T lymphocytes. So your white blood cells we're talking about, and you've got your T lymphocytes, which generally are considered the effector cells of the adaptive immune system. They're the ones that are going to get in there and gobble up the infected cells of your body and just get rid of them, phagocytose them, lyse them, render them ineffective, replicating a pathogen, all that stuff. And then there are the B lymphocytes. So these are famous for a lot of things, but they're mainly known for their ability to secrete antibodies, and they form the basis of immunological memory. So after we've encountered a pathogen of some kind, antibodies secreted in response to that continue to float around and serve as a trigger if we ever encounter that same pathogen again, so that we can mount a much more rapid and specialized response. And I do want to mention that in contrast to the innate immune response, which just goes after anything that would do us harm in a very non-specific way, the adaptive immune response is absolutely keyed towards the specific type of pathogen we're encountering, and specifically what, like within that pathogen class, we're dealing with. So if it's virus A, we're not going to engage the bacterial response. And if it's virus A, we're not going to engage the viral B response, just for virus A. So it's very specific and specialized. And I'm going to focus my talk today on the B lymphocytes here in a little bit. Say that if we pull back even further and accept the premise that there's an immune basis for stress responsivity, this is going to allow us to explore a multitude of conditions where we know that the function of the immune system is fundamentally altered, and that depression or mood disorders show up as part of the comorbid symptomology. So I've highlighted in green a couple areas that I'm working in. Postpartum depression is a great example for this, because we know that in order to have viability of the pregnancy, women who are pregnant are profoundly immune suppressed. And, when people were saying like, hey, we got to be careful of those immune suppressed people, we're not just talking about cancer patients. It's every single pregnant woman out here was absolutely super vulnerable to COVID in a very, very profound way. And that's just at the level of the mother. The fetus also has potentially devastating and long-term consequences of prenatal infection. So, it's very important that we keep pregnant people not sick. But in order to maintain the viability of the pregnancy and prevent rejection of the fetus by the mother's own body, the immune system has to be suppressed. And at a certain point, it has to come back into full gear. I hypothesize right now and have a study going with a colleague back in WVU that the rate at which the immune system normalizes, if it's too heavy or too much on the pro-inflammatory side of where it returns to function, that can be a distinguishing characteristic as to why some people go on to develop full-blown postpartum depression, whereas others just have baby blues for a little while and then they start to feel better. Okay. One thing before we go too much farther, for just as a final question, I want to take a minute to talk about resilience on a personal level, right? I talked about it on a research level. I want to talk about it on a practical, personal level. So please, in the chat, go ahead and respond with at least one activity that you do on a weekly basis to maintain your resilience to stress. And let's talk a little bit about those. While those are coming in, I'll talk about how I do it. So one of the things that I found very early on in my career that really helped me reduce stress was to have a guaranteed win. So science is hard, medicine is hard. Learning all this is difficult and it doesn't always work, right? So I've done, all the experiments I got to present to you today. I have 10 more that I'm not showing, right? Because things either didn't work or it's still in development, or I got some data now I'm scratching my head on and don't totally understand and need to think more about and continue to explore. Science is hard. We need wins. Social embeddedness and community engagement is a guaranteed win. So I'm just going to show a few pictures here of the various ways that I've done this, but mainly I love getting out into classrooms. I love engaging with the public about neuroscience. People very much are afraid of this topic. They think it's, brain surgery, which it kind of is, but it's not as hard once you start breaking it down and you find that people really get excited trying to understand the underlying ways that their brain is working. I also think this is critically important as we all experience this mental health crisis that is the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, younger generations were really showing a lot of challenges dealing with mental health issues. And I think a big part of what could be helpful is educating people on the underlying biology and the function of the organ from which we think these issues originate. And, it becomes a lot easier to say, hey, this is my brain repeatedly firing in a pattern that has been reinforced over time, as opposed to I have a moral failing because I just can't snap out of this and I have these perseverative thoughts that are unwanted. Very, very different interpretation there. And yet so far society has been, you just need to snap out of it. And I don't think that's very helpful. And I think brain education is going to be important. So I've showed a whole host of ways that we've done this. The last one is one I'm particularly proud of. We prepared 2,500 brain education pamphlets for school kids in the Monongalia County area right when the pandemic hit, so that they had something to do with their time after everyone got sent home. And I'll do a shameless brag. That one at the top with the little girl holding the brain is my daughter, and she's been an inspiration for a number of the programs that I've implemented. We have a next step program I'll just touch on lightly. It's called the Books and Brains program in New Orleans. And what we're going to do is, again, for virtual and remote STEM engagement, that's pandemic safe, put neuroscience education books in the public and free lending libraries all over town. We're going to collect some data on this. And I've got a number of awesome undergraduates who are working really hard to prepare videos so that people can potentiate their knowledge along with the books that they're reading by watching videos from cool mentors. And I love it because it gives not only the people in the community a way to engage with neuroscience, but it provides development opportunities for the undergraduates who are making those videos and involved in the program. And then lastly, I can't do this so much recently, but right before the pandemic, and I hope to resume soon, I often got sweaty and crashed into people a lot doing roller derby. It's a very physical sport. The thing I love the most about it is that sometimes you're on top and you're just absolutely crushing it. And that second picture shows me jamming for my team and scoring lots of points. And the next picture shows that I get knocked down and I have to get back up. And sometimes it's a more serious fail than others, but it is really fun and I really enjoy it. The cool thing I liked most about derby, and I think the thing that helped me, was that I had no basis for skills to apply to this. So I had to learn everything from scratch. And when you're at the top of your game professionally, it's kind of humbling and helpful to do something that you can and do suck at for a while. So I encourage you all to think about creative ways that will enrich you. And let's take a look at what some of the responses were. Okay, I like it. Baking and music, working out, good plan. A lot of baking, man. Everyone, I'm impressed. You have a lot of attention and ability to follow nice instructions, which is good. I love eating sweet treats. So anyone who wants to bake for me, I'll happily do it. Skateboarding, love it. Okay, spending time with friends, yeah, social connections key. Good. These are all fantastic. Oh, video games. I like it. Yeah, it's really a good way to connect with people virtually. These are all fantastic. So I would say definitely continue on those and make sure that you, at the start of your week, when you're trying to plan your life, carve out the time and do not budge unless you're under some critical deadline, or absolutely have to, make some calls that are tough. Do not wiggle on those things because it will drain you. If you have to wiggle on it, which does on some occasion happen, make sure that you find a way to continue renewing things for yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes of quiet time or going for a 10-minute walk around the neighborhood, even though you would have rather lifted weights. You got to make sure you continue to do those things because they will help you through the tough times. Good. Okay, a question I saw: what do I look for in students I work with, and what is my mentorship approach? That's an awesome question. I think what I look for when people are emailing me is first that they've done their homework, right? I can tell when someone has a form letter and it says, "Dear Dr. Engler," or Engler-Chiurazzi, it's usually spelled wrong. I would like to do research. Please let me know how I can get involved. That's fine. And I applaud people for at least trying. And that's good. But the best advice I can give you is do your homework and convince me that you want to be there. The reason being, maybe other people's science is easier. Mine is really intensive. I work with animals, so I'm on the animals schedule. It involves weekends. It involves holidays. It's a lot of physical work. And so I need to make sure, that people are serious because the animals' lives are at stake. I'm really passionate about making sure that animal welfare is prioritized. The scientific viability is at stake. We do not want to be needlessly doing experiments on animals. That's not good. So I'm always looking to make sure that people have shown that they're willing to do the effort in advance. And then, my mentorship approach, once people are in there, I'm 100% committed to their success. I would be happy if students with me are pipetting right next to me. COVID has made that a little bit harder, but definitely I prefer a one-on-one or small group type approach. I think there's nothing better than getting guided through the process. You shouldn't be left to fend for yourself. It's too hard and there's too much to learn. So that's my mentorship approach. But there has to be a trade-off, right? It has to be, you have to show me that you're willing to reap the benefits of that. And again, I do that by making sure that when people email me, they've done their homework, because again, this work is hard. So I would say check out anybody who you're interested in. If you're looking to get involved in research, if you know you want to do immunology, go to the immunology department's website. Take a look at the faculty pages. You'll get a sense about what people are doing at your institution. And if somebody is doing something with, virology, and you're really into that, read through the types of things that they're studying on their website. If there isn't much information, go to PubMed and look up some of their papers. Google them, and then in your email say things like, "Hey, I saw that you are a virologist studying this particular virus. I'm really interested in understanding how we fend off, viral infections, and I'd love to learn more from you. Can we meet to talk?" Like I said, that's very different than, "Hi, I'd like to do research." Not that "Hi, I like to do research" is the worst I've seen, but and it's definitely better than not responding at all. So definitely put yourself out there, even if it's not great. And I'm happy to read through your emails. If you want to send me a draft, I will give some feedback. It's not a problem. And remember too, on the other side, we are faculty are humans. We want to see you all successful. That's our job. Most of us got into this business to see our trainees succeed. Does that answer the question sufficiently? Okay. Another question that I see, why I chose to stay so long at ASU. Well, in part, undergraduate, I was done in 4 years. Though I know other people take longer. It just really depends on when you can get your classes. So I stayed as an undergraduate. I was considering other graduate programs. In fact, I was considering Tulane, among other schools, as a place to do graduate studies. A reason I turned Tulane down was that it was 2007 and they were in the recovery period from Katrina. And I thought, this is not the time to move into that area. Many research resources were not available. Another woman that I was strongly considering was at Yale at the time, but she was going up for tenure, which is a big time in an assistant professor's career. And at Yale, they pretty much don't give tenure very easily. Even if you're a stellar scientist, unless you got the Nobel Prize, it's kind of hard to stay at Yale long term. So she was going to be going through that process right in the middle of my graduate studies. And I decided that to move from Arizona to Connecticut and then to potentially pick back up and move somewhere else, as interested as I was in her and the research she was doing, I thought that was not going to work well for my life circumstances. And then lastly, probably the best reason is that I was at Arizona State. I did my honors thesis with Dr. Heather Bemonte Nelson. And, we had a really great relationship already going into graduate school. I was really excited to continue studying the things that we were going to be studying. So we were really interested in interrogating why the infamous Women's Health Initiative failed. And we were going to do that by studying in animals different estrogen formulations, different types of estrogen, different ways of administering it, to try and understand why this drug in humans did not work to help brain aging and biological aging for women. And yet when we looked in the animal literature, why estrogens were all kinds of beneficial for the brain and brain aging. So I was really excited about that project. And she was a phenomenal engaged mentor who has really influenced my style as well. So she, I said, I like working side by side. She and I would literally type papers and grants side by side in her office. And I really valued that attention. So that's I think the long and short of why I chose to stay at ASU. And then, graduate school, it takes varying amounts of time, right? Your PhD, unlike medical school, right, where it's predefined and it's, a certain number of classes, a certain number of rotations, graduate school, depending on how things work out, it can take less or it can take more time. And it's just a matter of if you get lucky. And so for me, it took a little bit longer just because I had a couple of studies not work appropriate or quite like we expected. And it meant that we had to pursue other avenues or really go down those lines for a little bit. And I was happy to do it. Life is long. I was in no rush to defend. So hopefully that answers your question, but I'm happy to talk as well. I'll be totally upfront too. I had a fiance at the time, and his needs and his professional viability were a consideration in my decision making. So that's absolutely an important piece of this. And family obligations are not. They're becoming increasingly appreciated and valued in academia, and they are not insignificant. So I definitely understand if others are facing those, that they may influence your decision as well. Okay. Would ninth grade be too young to have or look for a mentor? Is there an age range that professionals would prefer to mentor? It really depends. We had high school students rotating through our lab when I was a graduate student. So it's definitely possible. And I think it's about finding the right person who has the right type of lab to support training a high school student. There's some compliance level logistics that need to be worked through that are different than if we're mentoring undergraduates, but it's definitely doable. So I would not let that be a barrier. Definitely seek out opportunities to do research if that's something that you're interested in. And I'm gonna be honest, you're making me feel like a bit of a slacker that I didn't go for a research opportunity in high school myself. So good for you. Definitely seek out those opportunities. To the mentoring piece, you're never too early in your career for a good mentor. Find a mentor whose job you want, and then get with them. There's all kinds of great evidence about the absolute critical importance that mentors play in the success of trainees. So never hesitate. If you need or think you even might want to consider a career path, start doing some informational interviews, start reaching out and asking questions and learning about that career trajectory. I'm going to skip a question real quick. How do you find a mentor? It depends on what you want to do. So if you are, hoping to go to medical school and you're maybe thinking you might be interested in brain, talk to a neurologist, talk to a neurosurgeon, talk to a neuropsychologist, talk to a clinical psychologist, which is on the PhD side, a psychiatrist. Seek out these people. If you live in a town where there's a big university, especially a university with a medical school, you can look these people up. It might feel a little bit weird, but I imagine that most of you have a general practitioner who you see. Use them, use that person as your in. They may have friends who they went to medical school with who could direct you to people to chat with. And for the most part, you may get some bad apples. You might get some people that don't respond to your initial inquiries. Don't worry, it's a numbers game. People are busy. Either send another email to that person or move on and email somebody else. And again, you can get at that too, just by looking up people's names on faculty websites. That's, I would say, another possible approach. Definitely having a connection helps. So, if people are interested, I'm happy to leverage my network to help you find a mentor in a particular content area. If I know folks, but I know a good deal, so I might be able to help. So feel free to reach out to me privately. Okay, so somebody asked a more specific question, looking at upregulating interleukin-10 and how it might have the potential harmful effects such as not mounting an inflammatory response when necessary for white blood cell recruitment and antigen presentation? That's an awesome question. We don't know. I mean, for sure, if you squash and immune suppress the response to a legitimate threat, then we're gonna have issues, right? If it's a viral infection and we can't mount an immune response, the organism dies. So that's obviously a problem. There's always going to be a proper balance, and I think we don't yet know what that is. I'll also say that in the context of what I think is going on here, that chronic stress condition where we're just repeat activating of the immune system over and over and over again for a long period, it's probably way too pro-inflammatory at that point. So pulling back down the immune response to a more normalized level probably will, I think, not have a major negative role. But I don't know yet. I got to see. And, if you want to help me with it, reach out. Okay, so never apologize for asking a lot of questions. So, no issue. The question is, do I think that where I go to school or where someone goes to school influences the reputation in their studies? And, that's an interesting one. So there's definitely, how do I say this tactfully? There's definitely people for whom where you go to school is important, and they are they're out there and they will judge you based on where you go to school. And it does help to come from a prestigious university, at least to get you in the door. But once you're there, and this is something that I kind of wasn't ready for early on in my graduate studies, once you're in the door, you need to know what you're doing. And it's going to become readily apparent that you do or don't know what you're doing or know your stuff as soon as you start talking or very soon thereafter. People can kind of fake enthusiasm and fake knowledge, for a certain point. But, if someone came to me and said, oh, I went to flashy university here, and then they got to me and they said, I train with this person and I know, how to do all these animal functional assessments. And then I say, okay, well, here's a maze, here's that cheese, have your mouse go through it, and they can't do it, I'm going to know. So the prestige of the university matters a little bit, but I turned down very prestigious institutions to pursue my education with people who mattered. So for me, what's much more important is the mentoring quality you're going to get. So I turned down Yale to stay at Arizona State, which again, mind you, at the time was a party school. And I did it because I knew that the quality of education that I was going to get from the mentor that I was working with was going to be superb. I went to West Virginia University. Who even has heard of West Virginia University? Who even knows West Virginia is a state? That's been special. It is a state, just FYI, in case that's news. It's in Morgantown, West Virginia. Nobody is familiar with that. And the institution, they have a nice football team, but people are not very familiar with it. And yet the man that I was working with there was a field leader in understanding estrogen neuroprotection in the brain. So if he was in Antarctica, that's where I would have gone to work, because the quality of the mentoring that I got from working with him and the opportunities that working there presented me were phenomenal. So I would say the quality of the school, the reputation, it doesn't hurt, it definitely helps you a little bit, but knowing your stuff and getting good, solid mentoring and doing the research that you want, I think matters more. So there you go.
Thank you so much for those answers, Doctor. So I do have a questions of my own, if you don't mind answering those.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so was there anything you didn't expect when going into research on behavioral neurosciences?
Anything I didn't expect. So I'll tell you, it's maybe more of a high level graduate school thing. when I was a new graduate student, I thought, okay, all I have to do is do some studies, work really hard, learn some things. I'll defend my PhD, and then I'll never have to take another test or, defend my ideas again. I could not have been more wrong about that statement in any capacity, because now, and that's why graduate school is so hard, and it prepares you, uh, you know, it prepares you for this, whether you realize it or not. But about halfway through, I realized, and definitely after I got my PhD, I have a defense every day, right? It's not just one day and you think you're stressing and like preparing for it and like trying to do this massive dissertation and presentation. No, it's every day. Every day, other scientists are challenging my ideas. They're asking me, why did I do things this way? Why do I think I need to do things that way? Why do I think that this is what's going on? Someone just challenged me today. Would upregulating interleukin 10 actually be bad? Could be. Yeah, I don't know yet, but we got to study that. And definitely people are going to challenge why I think that this is an important cytokine. I have lots of reasons, but it doesn't mean that there's not negative consequences. So that was maybe one sort of thing that surprised me. And it was a little bit of a challenge, just coming to the realization that you got to know your stuff. You got to study, you got to work hard, you got to be well-versed in your content and in your skills, because people are going to ask you why, and you're going to have a good reason. And that came as a bit of a surprise, but now that I do it every day, I can teach others to be prepared for it. And so I challenge my students with those same questions. Why did you give 1 mil, per kg and not 2? Why did you give it at this time and not this time? Why not give it all the times and just see, and I'm not actually always looking for them to be to differ in the opinion. They don't even have to be right. I just want them to know that they're going to have to prepare answers. So yeah, that was maybe a little bit surprising for me, though, if that's comically answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I loved your answer, and I do believe now that I realize, going into research really requires you to be a person that thinks like on their feet quickly in order to to be ready for everything. I love that.
Yeah, take practice. Because I was never great at answering questions before, and maybe jury's still out whether I'm okay at answering them now. We'll see. But for sure, that was a big struggle. Early on in graduate school, I was really scared. I used to shake behind the podium when I would give a presentation, and I was desperately afraid of the question and answer session. It takes practice. And so, yeah, you do need to be able to think on your feet. You also need to be able to say, I don't know, or I don't know yet, or the like. But I would also say a key to graduate school and doing good science is thinking on your feet as little as you possibly can. I joke with the people that I guide and mentor now. I hate surprises, and I hate having to change plans last minute. So good planning, good communication is really the key ingredients for a very successful project. Now, whether the data come out significantly different or not is a whole nother thing that we're not in control of, but I'm absolutely in control of how my experiments get done. And I very much prefer not to be trying to troubleshoot and solve problems at the last minute and at the 11th hour. It's very stress inducing. So that's certainly something I've learned about myself through grad school. I think I knew it was going to be hard work and a lot of planning. I didn't necessarily appreciate fully how essential that was.
Okay, thank you. That's wonderful. So we do have some other questions in the chat, and I'm going to read them real quick for you so you can answer those. So the first one is, do you have any recommendations for high school students who know they want to study something in biology, but don't know exactly what?
Okay. That's certainly something that many people just starting out grapple with. I'm here to tell you, especially starting in high school, you've got time to figure it out. So try a few different research areas on for size. Biology is a huge field. I mean, you may start out in immunology and realize that you actually want to study conservation biology or ecology, and like go do field work, which would be cool too. And that's perfectly fine. And you will only really figure that out by doing. At an early-ish stage, you probably won't be able to do all the fun stuff. So my first couple research positions, I literally sat there and like put brains on slides. That was my whole job. It was very boring. But I sure did love working with brains. And so that sort of helped me think, okay, I want to do more of this, because I had previously done studies looking at human health behavioral choices and realized, oh, this survey stuff, with people is not my style. I don't like sitting here and just watching people put in scantrons. But for some people, that's the questions they want to ask are served by that type of research. So try it, and also do some soul searching. What questions do you want to ask and answer? What areas do you think you want to contribute to? And let that be your guide. And then that being said, be prepared for it to change, because I thought I wanted to cure menopause and actually early on I thought I wanted to really focus on Parkinson's disease, and I didn't enjoy that experience as much. And then I wanted to do menopause, and now I'm doing immunology and stress, which is all super important. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so it's wonderful. Like there's a lot, well, maybe not a lot, but there's definitely some trial and error involved in this.
Yeah. And sometimes you can think it's going to be great and then realize it's not for you, or vice versa. You can be really surprised at what topics become really important to you when you learn more about them. So yeah.
Okay, that's great. So the other question that we have over here is, was there any research biases that you had, but then changed your mind as you furthered your research?
Let's see, research biases. I'm not sure I'm totally understanding what is meant by that. Could the question poser maybe clarify? I mean, for sure, we all have our biases, so I'll launch into that. If you have the opportunity, I strongly encourage taking 10 minutes, 20 minutes to do the implicit bias testing that's available online. Just search like implicit bias quiz or test. I mean, that definitely revealed that it pains me to admit it out loud. I am slightly biased against women in sciences and STEM fields, just as a sort of like implicit, parent association thing. And I was like, am I serious right now? Like I have railed against this. And yet I slightly more associate male names with STEM activities. Like this is outrageous. So yeah, the Harvard, that's the one I've taken. I strongly recommend that. So absolutely exploring your own biases that you bring and really doing some soul searching is very helpful. Is that?
Okay, so I believe they did a little bit of a clarification of what they actually meant. So it says like that you ever have a hypothesis in which you believed a certain outcome would happen, but the results changed your perspective.
Okay. I mean, the cool thing about hypothesis testing is that you always, by the fundamental nature of hypothesis testing, you're always setting yourself out to be proven wrong. So, I mean, I get proven wrong by my data all the time. In graduate school, I was doing work on Premarin. Okay, so that's the estrogen formulation. It comes from purified pregnant mare urine. I kid you not. This is what they give women. It's just pregnant mare urine purified in a pill. And it contains a bunch of estrogens, many of which are not found endogenously in the woman's body. And we did this study where we gave Premarin to rodents, which had not been done for cognitive assessments until we had really started that ball rolling. And the Women's Health Initiative said Premarin is bad news. Like, it doesn't help cognition. It increases risk for cardiovascular outcomes. And then we give it to rodents, and like, surprise, surprise, it's beneficial. Like, it helps them think. And so that was a bit of a shock, right? We were expecting to see impairments, and we actually saw enhancements. And so additional work that I did following up on my colleagues' work was to try and understand, okay, is it because of the way that we gave it? Is it because of the circulating estrogen ratios that were realized after the drug got metabolized? And in fact, it was, because then we did another follow-up study where we gave just one metabolite and just another metabolite. And when we gave this other metabolite, we saw the beneficial effects were realized. And then when we gave this other one that was like the principal circulating estrogen, and we sort of way up that ratio, we again saw the detrimental effects that we had seen in humans. So that really helped us understand and contextualize these very controversial findings. But I would say, in answer to your question, the Women's Health Initiative, that was, it's like infamously controversial, and an example of what you're talking about. The whole field of women's health thought exogenous estrogens were going to be great. And then, that's based on a ton of animal work, a bunch of epidemiological studies where estrogen therapies were used. And then they did this study, and we saw no benefit largely, and even some impairing hurtful effects. And that was really terrifying for a generation of women. So that's one where our biases were kind of the opposite way. We thought this is going to be great. And then because of some fundamental design flaws in the execution of that work, and some maybe lack of understanding about when the intervention needed to happen, we were totally shocked as a field when those data came out. And they came out right as I was about to start undergraduate studies and really learning about the brain and how we think. So that was really interesting. But yeah, all the time. I try not to expect my data to be one way or the other. I never am seeking data to be a certain way. If that makes sense? So I never want my data to come out in support of my hypothesis. The data are what they are, right? So, and it's my job to interpret what the data are telling us about the overall phenomenon. So if the data come back to me and say, yep, there's definitely an association here, and we keep doing the studies and we keep seeing that, then we can logically sort of say, yeah, there's probably an association here. But if they come back and say, nope, what you thought was going on is maybe not quite so simple, then we have to refine our hypotheses, because the data are what they are. They're neither good nor bad. So I do try and check those biases at the door. I will say, just that you didn't ask this, but one of the scariest, but also the most exhilarating times of my day is when I'm hovering over the analyze button on my stats program and I'm waiting to see what the results are. It's fun, also scary. Okay.
So for our last question of this session, this one says, what in your opinion, what are the benefits of curing menopause?
Okay, well, so maybe I should have been more precise in my language. Menopause is associated with all kinds of biological shifts. It's a very transformative experience for the women who go through it. And some ways it's good, other ways it's not so good. I am principally interested in how shifts in levels of endogenous, or I was at the time in graduate school, shifts in how endogenous sex hormones affected the brain and its function. And this was important because we know that estrogens are neuroprotective. Estradiol, the principal or the most potent circulating estrogen, is incredibly beneficial to synaptic integrity and brain cognition. neurogenesis. I mean, all these things are associated with estradiol. So the loss of these hormones that occurs naturally at menopause can be pretty impactful for women's brain function and their neurological health during aging. And in fact, after menopause, women's risk for, a whole host of biological issues like cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, stroke, all of it, they all go up. And so, understanding how menopausal transitions and then the therapies that we would take that contain estrogens is really important, especially in trying to understand how that affects the brain. The last reason it was really important for me to cure menopause is that, 100 years ago, women would live to 60, 65, and that's maybe 5-10 years outside the menopausal transition. So they were living with these consequences of estrogen depletion for a fairly short window in time. And, thanks to significant advances in medical practice and our ability to, extend lifespan, people are now living 30 years post-menopausal, which is longer than, we typically, I think, as species typically do, longer than that typically happens. So we need to really understand what those consequences are. And so that's, I think when I say cure menopause, I'm thinking more precisely, understand what a, large portion of the population is dealing with from a brain function perspective. Thanks for asking that, and sorry for it not being totally clear at first.
Okay, so thank you so much, Doctor. I'll be presenting our wrap-up slides since we are ready to end with this live session today. Okay, so they're ready over here. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Engler. I think we all learned a lot from your presentation. At least I know I did. I love having PhDs, as hosts for our live sessions. We do learn a lot about the research, and I think that's wonderful. So you guys, considering this, we would like to encourage everyone on this session today to reflect on these 3 questions that are over here. So what brought you to this session specifically? What are 3 major takeaways that you may have gotten from it? And what do you want to learn more about? You can take your time, you can write this in a piece of paper, you can just answer these on your mind, just think about them, let them sit in. If you do decide to write them, we do want to, highlight that the writing is not required. However, we encourage you to submit it to our website for publication for recognition of your hard work and to enhance your future applications, as mentioned earlier. If you want to learn more about PHS and get involved in our program, we encourage you all to visit our website. You can become an asynchronous volunteer to get certified hours through professional nominations, graphic design, and social media promotion. And we are also accepting team member applications. So if you want to take on a more active role in PHS to lead projects and initiatives, to be up here with us. Once again, we are humbly asking that if you are financially able to donate, that you please consider doing so. It costs a lot to keep our program up and running and free to all of you. So if you are someone who can afford to, or if you know someone else who can, please support those who cannot by donating to our organization so we can continue to get the education they deserve. Otherwise, we simply ask you to spread the word about PHS to reach as many students as possible. Now, here we are for the part that you have all been waiting for, that is earning a digital certificate for the virtual shadowing hours from this session today. So the first step is you're gonna go onto our website and find our professionals course pages. Here you can take our quick quiz, which is a 10-question multiple choice based on the content from this session today. You will have 30 minutes per attempt to earn a 70% or higher to get your certificate. We, of course, know that sometimes technology can be difficult, and for this reason, we allow up to 2 attempts to take the assessment. But if you run into any other difficulties, please do not hesitate to contact us so we can help you. To ensure that our website does not crash from a high influx of students, we recommend waiting 30 minutes to an hour after the session to take the quiz, which will be open indefinitely. And finally, once you have passed, you can click the Finish Course button at the bottom of the professionals page and download your certificate verifying your virtual shadowing hours. If, unfortunately, you missed a part of the session or you want to go back and view other sessions to earn more certificates with verified virtual shadowing hours, you can go to our YouTube channel and watch our previous recordings. You can also find them via the professionals page on our website and also take the post-shadowing assessments for these as well. Be sure to follow us on social media or subscribe to our email list for the latest updates on upcoming sessions and events. We are currently booked every single weekday up through June for virtual shadowing sessions, so we definitely hope to see you guys over there. Once again, thank you all for joining us today, and please feel free to stick around if you have any questions, and myself and other team members will definitely be happy to answer them. This shadowing session is officially over, and I invite you all to log off. Have a wonderful day or night.